Hello and welcome back to the channel. Following our journey through the northern half of Portugal, today we visit two other historic villages, Castelo Rodrigo and Castelo Mendo, both endowed with castles and walls, and strategically located very close to the border with Spain. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. Castelo Rodrigo is a small walled village, located on the top of a hill, and that with great strategic value, dominated the plain that stretches between Spain and Portugal. As for parking, you will have no problem, as you have a large free parking, which at the bottom is a caravan area, and which is located right next to the historic villa. A cold and foggy morning welcomes us to Castelo Rodrigo, the small historic village that is recognized by the World Tourism Organization as one of the best places to visit, based on the preservation of its culture and traditions. Usually, the visit would start with the Porta do Sol, but we prefer to enjoy the panoramic view that Castelo Rodrigo offers on a hill, and admire the wall that surrounds the villa, which still preserves some of the towers, of the 13 that it had when it was built. It is said that it was the Vetans who founded Castelo Rodrigo, although the oldest remains found are from the Middle Ages, being the place of passage of several peoples, such as the Muslims, and the friction point between the kingdoms of Leon and Portugal, until in 1296 this territory passed to the hands of Portugal after the conquest of the King Dom Dinis. We access the villa by the Porta de São João, one of the three entrance doors that pass through the walled enclosure. On one of the terraces we find the Padaio da Restauração, a monument that invokes moments of Portuguese history in which Castelo Rodrigo actively participated, such as the restoration of independence in 1640, and the siege that took place in 1664, and the subsequent battle. We are at the foot of the castle, founded in 1209 by King Alfonso IX of Leon. When Dom Dinis recovered the castle for Portugal, the castle was reformed and the walls of the village were built, being also at this time the Tower of the Tribute. Subsequently, during the 14th and 15th centuries, improvements to the castle and the defensive system will continue. In the 16th century, when the crown fell into the hands of Philip II, he gave the county to Cristobal de Moura, responsible for his diplomacy, who ordered to build a palace in the place of the castle, which was burned and looted in 1640 with the restitution of the independence of Portugal, although the large monumental entrance gate is preserved. Next to the castle we find the clock tower, located in the old wall of the barbecue that protected the Alcazaba, where this bell tower was added, which originally has a hammer clock with granite weights. We enter through the paved streets, from which it looks like a small but very beautiful toy village, in which to enjoy it you do not need to follow a fixed itinerary. And so we arrive at one of the three entrances of Castelo Rodrigo, the Porta do Sol, called also West Gate, because it is oriented in the direction where the sun rises, and from where the plain of the border with Spain is dominated. We are in the month of November, with fog and cold, and as you can see everything is closed, which does not prevent you from enjoying the walk through Castelo Rodrigo, both its beautiful stone houses and the decoration and setting that its inhabitants have given it. We arrive at the center of the village, where we find the Church of Our Lady of Rocamador, founded in the 13th century by the Fraternity of Our Lady of Rocamador Fellows, a congregation dedicated to the assistance to the pilgrims who went to Santiago de Compostela, and in front of which we find a beautiful Pelourinho. We continued walking by Castelo Rodrigo, and without realizing we passed by the medieval cistern, which is believed to have been a synagogue intended for worship, was later destroyed after the expulsion of the Jews, and later reused as a water reservoir. On our walk we can find several houses, such as the House of the Chain, which gives name to the street where it is located, the House of Mercy or the Rabbi's House, and on whose doors we find laid several inscriptions, such that of the number 32 of the Street of the Chain, where we find a Hebrew inscription, which dates from the year 1508, and that verifies the presence of the community of Jews and New Christians in Castelo Rodrigo. And here we end our visit to Castelo Rodrigo, a small and beautiful historic village, which we recommend your visit. From Castelo Rodrigo traveling to the south, we arrive at Castelo Mendo, which was during the Middle Ages, a place of great historical importance in Portugal, due to its proximity to the Spanish border. As for parking, you will have no problem, as you have free parking, which in its lower part is for caravans, and which is located at the gates of the historic villa. It follows the day with cold and fog, so we decided to leave MIA again in the caravan, and we started our walk through Castelo Mendo, where it seems that we are the only tourists that visited it. Castelo Rodrigo has a medieval composition in which two nuclei, the citadel and the barbican, are distinguished. In the citadel today are the remains of the castle, and outside the walls of this one we find the new Borgo, surrounded by a wall of the 13th century, to which we access by the so-called Porta da Vila, flanked by the pre-Roman sculptures of two granite pigs. We enter its historical center of the most photogenic, and where the first thing we find is the Church of St. Vincent, also called Church of Mercy, and that dates from the 13th century. In the small square where the church is located, and also the entire historic center, you can see several Manueline-style houses, such as the Quinientist house, a two-story house from the 16th century, with a beautiful gateway of granite and wood. Before heading towards the center, in front of the church, we turn to the right through narrow and paved streets, with other beautiful houses in Manueline style. On our way we arrive at what is called the Hospital da Misericordia, a house built in the second half of the 16th century, of which there is no evidence that served as a hospital, and with a beautiful stone-carved bed on the entrance door, where we can read in Latin the phrase "My hope is God." Very close we arrive at the Porta da Garda, facing west, which is one of the 5 entrance doors to the outer walled enclosure. We continue parallel to the wall surrounding the historic center, just as small, but also as beautiful as that of Castelo Rodrigo. We headed towards the center, but before we reached the Praça da Vila, we headed to the citadel, and through a medieval stone road, we crossed the remains of what was the Gate of Don Sancho, and we accessed the old town, in which the Church of Santa Maria do Castelo stands out above all. This church, which is now in ruins, was built in Romanesque style in the 13th century, and was expanded in the 16th with the construction of a side chapel. Next to the church, on a balcony, in addition to the solitary grave of the Hidalgo, we find the site where the castle was located and of which there are few remains. An informative panel helps us to understand how this castle, founded at the end of the 12th century, was in its day, and still preserves some remains of the Tower of Homage, as well as the Gate of Castellino, which was the oldest access to the castle core, or the so-called Gate of Betrayal. Near the ruins of the Tower of Homage, we find the so-called Rock of Desires, which according to popular tradition, if you want any of your wishes to come true, you have to throw a stone in the direction of this rock. If it falls on it, your desire will be fulfilled, and if it does not come true you will have to come back another time to try luck again, and it will be up to us to return. From here we head to the center, and after passing by a community oven from the 18th century, we arrive at the Pelourinho Square. Here, in addition to the tallest Pelourinho in the region of the banks, since it is 7 meters high and that was built in 1510 in Manueline style, we can also find the St. Peter's Church, which although built in the 14th century, later reconstructions erased any trace of the medieval. We also found a beautiful house with porch balcony, another beautiful house from the 16th century, and belonging to some of the wealthiest families of Castelo Mendo. And from the walls, we say goodbye to the beautiful town of Castelo Mendo, another beautiful historic, of which there are still several to discover.